All right, hold on. Just reading nasty comments.
Why do you even read?
Because I'm the executive producer. I should know what people are saying. It's, I wouldn't read if it was about me. That's a lie, too. Okay. Here we are. All right, it is Thursday, April 16th. I am here with the one, the only, Anna Navarro and Cha-Cha in the new studio in the Bry Cave. This is very exciting.
Oh, we're calling this the Bry Cave
I'm trying
now?
something different every day to see what catches on. But yeah, I like it.
Well, if you ask me, I think you have podcast envy. I think you were very envious of my set on Bleep with Anna Navarro.
Yes.
Where we had...
The Webby nominated Bleep. Wait, no, that wasn't you. That was us. That was us that was Webby nominated, not Bleep with Anna Navarro.
And you won.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. There's one day left. You can still vote today, and they closed the things. We're in a lead, but it's not. I'm not taking anything for granted.
Okay, if you do win, there's a ceremony.
There's a ceremony, yes.
And you will have to drag Joy Behar out of her cave.
I think so.
And out into interaction with other humans.
Yes, and if there's not everyone gives a speech, but the rules at the Webby Awards are 5-word speeches, so. That would be a challenge for Joy.
I can think of 5 words Joy would like to say, but I think they would all have to be bleeped out.
There you go. All right. Well, no, yes, I am.
I think she could quote De Niro.
Oh,
in the Oscars.
That could happen. I do think that you have a lovely set on your podcast, and I'm excited that we're doing this. It feels a little bit more.
It feels nice.
Yeah, it feels good. It feels good. And Cha-Cha, we were worried about her, but she's got her table here, and she seems good to go. I think
that's the only thing that matters.
The more prominently Cha-Cha is displayed in the podcast, the better the podcast does.
Cha-Cha's already asleep. You're boring her.
All right. I'm sorry. Well, then let's get into the important stuff. We've been talking all week about the president's beef with the Pope, and of course, the possibly AI imagery of him being Christ-like. Now, or if you ask him, a doctor. Have you heard that theory? I saw it on social media. I don't think it's probably not true, but they're suggesting that maybe advisors told him to say that the picture was doctored, and then he came out and said he was a doctor.
Brian, who cares whether it was doctored, he was a doctor? The whole thing is so cuckoo, crazy, insane. Like it amazes me that we are actually having real debates, right? On TV. I've had them here on The View. We've had them on CNN about this entire thing that is so crazy on its face that we shouldn't even be debating. There is nothing to debate here.
And yet,
it is
here
wrong.
We are.
It is inappropriate. It is stupid. I mean, he's just antagonized 50+ million Catholics in the United States. And listen, some of those Catholics are like me, right? I do not pretend to be a great practicing Catholic. But we don't like, even if you're like me and go to Mass only when somebody dies or gets married, we don't like anybody messing with our Pope. Yeah. We just don't. It's kind of like one of those things where I can make a joke about Hispanics. You can't make a joke about Hispanics. Okay, I can criticize my Pope. Donald Trump cannot criticize my Pope. And he's not just criticizing him, he's attacking him. But the whole thing has mushroomed into the most absurd thing I have seen from Donald Trump this year, which is a very high bar. Because and it's not just Trump, it's Trump and his minions, right? Because now you've got J.D. Vance, who's been a Catholic for all of 5 minutes, out there telling the Pope to be careful with his words. Okay, when you work for a guy that celebrates Bob Mueller's death, celebrates Rob Reiner's death, posts images of the Obamas as apes, says things like that Diet Coke cures cancer, you don't have the moral standing to tell anybody to be careful with their words. When you work with somebody who is as negligent, reckless, and divisive with his words as Donald Trump is, you don't get to preach to the Pope about being careful with words, and much less about theology. I mean, the hubris of this late-blooming Catholic. He's had a lot of conversions, J.D. Vance, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's been a lot of things on at one point he was an atheist. Oh, but then again, at one point he was also a never Trumper.
Well, so yeah, to the point you're talking about.
That guy will do anything and say anything and bend it to any wind that's blowing.
Yeah, he said that the Pope should be careful about talking about theology, which is kind of
But there are, I mean, like Marco Rubio has been a practicing Catholic.
Yes.
And, it's been a very big part of his life. And he hasn't said anything.
No, he hasn't commented
There's been, I don't know that there's been a single Republican in Congress that I have heard loudly condemn what Trump has done. And that's part of the problem. Like, I was actually sitting on CNN this week talking about this, debating this on one of the shows. And somebody was actually defending the entire he's a doctor theory. And you see, that's why he comes up with these cockamamie, asinine excuses, because his followers are willing to go on national TV and come across as complete morons just so that they can keep defending this guy and don't have to.
On tape that will live forever. It's odd to me how many people will do that. I mean, and I will say, this has changed. This has caused more people to criticize him from the right than almost anything else we've seen.
Yeah, but I don't think it's the act in itself, right? Which is outrageous. But this is not the first time he kind of portrays himself as the Messiah. It's not the first time that,
it's the first time people have been upset about it.
Yeah, but I think it's because it's kind of like, it's like, at what point does this is the drop that overflows, your cuppeth runneth over, right? Let's get biblical. And and it's so many different things happening at the same time, and one after the other, right? It's the high gas prices. It's this war that nobody understands. He didn't prep the country for it, and it's overwhelmingly unpopular with the American people. It's it's the insane tweets at 4 a.m. constantly. It's the attacks on allies. It's Greenland. It's Panama Canal. It's, getting into fights with the Pope. And so I just, and then it's portraying himself as Jesus. So I think it's just people are fed up, right? And they have less tolerance because of everything else going on. Like, maybe if gas was cheap, maybe if the stock market was great, maybe if people felt optimistic about the economy, they would be willing to look the other way at this insanity. But because none of those things are happening, people have lost their tolerance. And I noticed it this weekend. So I was landing back from Costa Rica, right? I was landing. I was about 5 minutes away from landing at MIA. And 5 minutes away, we're about to land. I can see the airport. I was so happy we were landing early. Oops, the airport is closed. They call it a VIP closure. It's because the President of the United States had decided again to show up in Miami for a UFC fight. And I saw some of the local kind of like feed, some of the local accounts that tweet about Dade and Miami-Dade County, tweeting about it and just like putting images of him and his motorcade going into the Casella Center. There's a lot of Trump-loving Cubans and Nicaraguans and Venezuelans in Miami. People were pissed. The comments for the first time I saw were overwhelmingly, I'm talking 80-20 against Trump, wasting taxpayer money, wasting time. Is this what he should be doing in the middle of a war? Yeah. Coming to Miami, while the talks are going on in Iran, led by, these two real estate moguls, his son-in-law and his buddy, and J.D. Vance, he's sitting there in a UFC fight, kind of like flirting with the UFC guy, telling him, well, you know what, you're too good looking to be a fighter. The whole thing is insane. People were pissed. Yeah. For the first time, I saw the tide turn on him in Miami.
Well, perspectives change over time for sure. In fact, it makes me think of what you said earlier in this conversation. You said how you can make a joke about Hispanic culture and people and I can't. But I've got
don't
one.
Even try.
No, I'm going to try. Here we go. All right. So recently, I went to see a Spanish-speaking magician, and it was unbelievable. It was really cool. He got up on stage, and he said he's going to disappear on the count of 3. And then he said, 1, 2, poof. He was gone without a trace. Thank you. All
That
right.
is such a dad joke.
That's a dad joke.
Okay, but that's not okay. That is not a joke.
No, I know, but I saw an
Where
opening.
we're like, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay,
fine.
that's all I had. All right, thank you. All right, in other news this week, there were two big resignations in Congress. First, we had Representative Eric Swalwell and Tony Gonzales both stepped down. Now, we've talked about Tony Gonzales for a while, and you've been calling for him to step down after he admitted to an affair with a staffer that later died by suicide. Swalwell, more recently, has been accused of sexual assault by multiple women, which he's denied. Him stepping down, I mean, this all happened very quickly. You know, on Sunday, he was still running for governor and a front runner for governor for the Democrats. Are these steps in the right direction? How do you feel about it?
Well, it's hard to say that there's steps in the right direction when these things are still happening. It's hard to fathom that these things are still happening post Me Too.
Yeah.
That there can be powerful men who have the hubris still at this point when they know that there's accountability
There's
and
so
there can
many
be
of them.
accountability.
It's really
It's hard for me to say that it's a step in the right direction when there's still a slush fund in Congress for the purpose of paying out sexual assault and sexual harassment claims by staff. That's outrageous. You and me are paying these settlements. So yeah, I think I don't call this a step in the right direction. What I will say is that the reason this happened as quickly as it did with Eric Swalwell and then prompted the exit of Tony Gonzales is because Democrats, every single Democrat who had endorsed him in this governor's race, every single Democrat lined up and called for his stepping down, his removal, removed their endorsement, including his best friend, Senator Ruben Gallego. And let's contrast that with what happened with Tony Gonzales. So Tony Gonzales has admitted, and he's another one that brings God in every admission and every apology. He talks about how God and this, God that. But Tony Gonzales, this congressman from Texas, Republican, admitted he had this affair with the staffer who then died by suicide. And Mike Johnson, the holy roller Speaker of the House, basically said there's nothing to see here and we're okay and we're not forcing him to resign because he's got such a slim margin that he needed the vote. So he was willing to look the other way on somebody that has egregious violations of ethics, of House of Representative rules, just because he needed the vote. And it wasn't until Eric Swalwell situation happened and Eric Swalwell was going to resign that prompted the other resignation, because then he wouldn't be losing one Republican vote. He'd be even. That's disgusting. That is disgusting that the Speaker of the House, who is constantly quoting the Bible and constantly portraying himself as this huge Christian, was willing to look the other way on Tony Gonzales until the math worked out. And, you know, one of the things on this Swalwell thing that has had me thinking, and I'm wondering how you feel about it, is I now hear all these people saying, yeah, you know, it was an open secret in Washington. Everybody knew about it. I'm not sure I believe that. I mean, I'm pretty sure people knew that he drank a lot. But I'm not sure people knew that it was an open secret in Washington about, you know, him committing sexual assault and
I think
alleged
maybe womanizing
rapes.
might have been, and maybe that's what it is. But
well, there's a lot of womanizers in Washington.
Apparently
you know,
so.
There's a lot of womanizers in Washington. But and the reason that I have my doubts on it is because this guy, Eric Swalwell, was on CNN and basically every cable channel all the time. Mm-hmm. And these CNN reporters and bookers and hosts.
President, so I mean, you
but
you get vetted pretty heavily. Then.
So did freaking Donald Trump and won.
Yeah.
I mean, So you know, you obviously can declare bankruptcy, be accused of sexual assault, boast about grabbing a woman by the hoo-ha, and still get elected president. So that bar is gone, Brian. But what I'm trying to say to you is, the cable news hosts who cover Washington are pretty plugged in. And if they were having him on TV as constantly as they were, because he was one of these that was always on TV, I'm not sure that I know that I believe that everybody knew that he was, a sexual assaulter, that he was a womanizer, maybe, that he was that he drank heavily, yes. But the other part, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you where like you find out that somebody you thought you knew well had like a completely double life?
Not anyone in my real life. And to be clear, these were all alleged things. The assaulting, the womanizing, the drinking, all of it alleged, but there are people
Right.
speaking out to these things. I mean, there's been people, I've worked in television and interviewed celebrities for a long time, and there's definitely been people that you've learned about them later. I mean, I used to work with Bill Cosby and people like that, and, there was definitely things that were like, oh, that's not who I thought you were. But no one in my real life. I honestly feel like I have a pretty good read of people in general, and I think I've not been surprised in a major way by people that I know. What about you? Do you feel like you're a good judge of character in those moments, or no?
I thought I was, but this in the last year, I mean, like something that just blew my mind happened, which was, so I had this good friend, and this is all public now. There's a lot of, you can go look this case up, Sergio Pino. I had this friend, good, had known him for decades. Al's good friend. We were friends. And he was very involved in Republican politics. He'd been a big donor, but then he broke. He didn't like Trump. And I remember calling a friend of mine who was a fundraiser for Biden, and Biden was coming to Miami. And I said, why don't we call Sergio? Sergio hates Trump, and Sergio has all this money. He'll make a donation. And my friend who's very plugged in, said to me, no, we can't call Sergio. Sergio's being investigated by the FBI. And I said, for what? And he said, for poisoning Tatiana. Tatiana was his wife.
Oh, my God.
And I said, Chris, that's insane. What are you talking about? What horrible gossip? Where are you getting that from? Are you on drugs? What are you talking about? And I remember I went home that night, and the minute Al came through the door, I said to him, you're not going to believe what I was told today. Well, fast forward a few months, Sergio is getting investigated by the FBI for poisoning his wife with fentanyl, which had been found out through the entire thing. He'd hired like his boat captain. All of these people have now, most of these people have now pled guilty. And the FBI goes to serve an arrest warrant on Sergio, and Sergio ends up killing himself.
Oh, my God.
In his house. This is a multi-millionaire, well-known Miamian. The picture they always put of them when they're talking about this case now in Miami is the picture from my wedding.
Oh, my God.
Because he and his wife attended my wedding, and this was all happening. Like, best friends with Marco Rubio.
Wow.
He was one of the big donors of Marco Rubio early on. I mean, the whole thing. And I had no idea. I knew he was a womanizer. Mm-hmm. I knew he cheated on his wife. I knew he, I knew he had a bunch of women. That was like a thing. But I didn't know and could not imagine he was slowly poisoning his wife with fentanyl. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So
go look it up. I mean, it's like like a movie.
So you never know anybody, I guess.
That's
is the
my
answer.
point. Yeah.
I guess that's true. I've been lucky so far, but or I haven't found anything out yet about the people in my life. But so far, so good. Well, it's interesting because we were talking about this on the show today that TMZ is opening an office down in D.C. now, and they're going to be,
oh my God,
doing to politicians what they do to celebrities in general all the time. And they're very good at it. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
But I think they've taken it too far. Like I saw, during during the shutdown and the DHS thing and the TSA, who by the way are still not getting paid. The Congress went off on vacation. They started saying to people,
let us know if you see
let
them
us know, send videos, send pictures. And of course, we saw the picture of Lindsey Graham, holding like a bubble wand or something in Disney World. But they sent a picture of like Alex Padilla, the senator from California, who was at a baseball game in Washington, D.C., where his hometown team, the LA Dodgers, were playing against whomever the hell the Washington team is, the Nationals.
The Nationals. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, okay. To me, that's a world away from Lindsey Graham in Disney World.
Yeah.
I
don't know. I kind of feel like sunlight is good. Let's see what everybody's doing. I don't know. All right. The other big debate we had on the show this week, on a show you weren't here for, was about how Congresswoman Omar made a lot of news saying Democrats should show grace to former MAGA people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. You were open to Marjorie when she was here. Do you agree with her in general? Are you willing to
Look,
let
I think,
bygones as people change their minds?
no, I think she's a. I think she has. I think she delves in conspiracies. I think she's a nutcase. But I think, but for Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace, some of these women with whom I disagree, Republican women with whom I disagree vehemently, and who have been huge Trump apologists and supporters, but for them, there would have been no vote to compel the release of the Epstein files.
That's right.
So I give them a lot of credit on that issue. I mean, let's remember Donald Trump and his minions brought Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room to try to bully her into not voting for the release of those files in that bill. So that to me, and I think that's the straw that broke the camel's back between her and Trump. I mean, she voted with Trump on practically everything. It was that Epstein issue where they broke, and when she broke on that one issue, he came after her with, all hell hath no fury, like Trump scorned. How do I feel about the whole thing? I don't think Democrats need to do anything. I think that when you are a lifelong Republican, an active Republican, a Trump supporter who decides to break with him, I think it is a personal and internal decision. Like you don't need somebody, around the pool saying, come in, the water is warm, come in, and, cheering for you to take the step. I just think, they don't have to attack them, but I don't think they have to be, welcoming them either. And the other thing I don't think is, a lot of times when Republicans break with Trump, and it's happened to me, Democrats are like, when are you becoming a Democrat?
Right.
That you're breaking with Trump doesn't mean you're a Democrat. It means that, you're just not willing to put up with this asinine narcissist asshat as president.
Right.
So, so stop putting pressure on people to leave the party. Stop putting pressure on people to become a Democrat or to do what you want them to do. Just leave it alone. Let people do, it's, I think that when you make the decision to, and it's hard, when you make the decision to break with your party, when you have been very active in political circles, that means you are probably losing friends and professional contacts and family members, the whole thing. So just let people have their own principles, have their own coming to Jesus, that Jesus, the real one. Have to reconcile their political beliefs and actions with their own conscience, and just I don't think people need to do anything. I think it's a personal thing. At least that's how I felt. It was for me.
Yeah.
I don't need people telling me, come over, turn blue. No, just leave me the hell alone. It's about me. It's not about others.
That's
it's about
a good way to look at it.
It's a personal
I think.
thing.
Yeah. All right. Before we go, I heard there was something at Coachella that sparked your interest, and I wanted to hear about your spring break trip a little bit. So tell me about this.
Well, okay. Let's just start with spring break. Spring break, I went to Costa Rica, which for me brings the Pacific coast of Costa Rica, the Guanacaste Peninsula, which is right across the border from Nicaragua. So it's very nostalgic for me because in Latin America, Holy Week, Semana Santa is huge, right? Everybody goes to the beach. And when I was a little kid growing up in Nicaragua, we would move to our beach house for 2 months, 3 months, and they would drive me to school every morning, which was like 20 minutes away, 30 minutes away. That beach was very close. And obviously I can't go to Nicaragua now, and so this was kind of the closest I can get to replicating that experience and eating the food that I would eat in Nicaragua, tortillas and cheese and rice and beans and, and swimming in the beaches in the same kind of Pacific, Central American beaches where the sand is a little darker, the water's a little colder, there's a little more waves. But those are the beaches of my childhood. So
it feels like a homecoming.
Yeah, it's really, really nice to tell you the truth. And I was so struck, so this area, Nicoya, the peninsula, is a blue zone, one of those places where people live to be 100 years old. And it's about, and it just struck me because when I go there, I try to disconnect. I was able to disconnect under Biden a lot better than I can disconnect under
Sure.
Trump because
Mostly, I just heard from you saying you might not come back. So
well,
that
yes,
was it. Yeah.
I have a retirement plan now, but not once was I asked, "What do you do?"
Mm-hmm.
If you go anywhere in the United States, you go to any some random person who you'll never who's having a drink next to you will say, "Oh, and what do you do?"
Yeah.
Nobody asked that. Nobody was wearing labels. Nobody was wearing Gucci or, oh, what are you wearing? What shoes are those? There's so much human interaction. There's so much interaction with nature, right? People are walking their dogs on the beach. People are swimming. People are playing pickleball. There's a huge expat community of Americans, Canadians, French people that have moved to Costa Rica for this pace of life where you're just present and you're not glued to the news the entire time. I didn't turn on cable news one time. I read the New York Times in the morning, and there's certain things that, will pop in my feed. But other than that, I just did not read,
That's good.
I spent time with my husband. I spent time with my nephew, with my friends who came with us. I drank a lot of margaritas. I was in the pool the whole day. And I can just see, and I was saying to my pickleball coach was telling me down there, he says, when I lived in the United States, I had debt. I had a line of credit that was tapped out. I owed money on a car. I owed money on a house. He says, here, I live in a 1,500 square foot house. I own my car. I own I just live. I don't have to be pretending anything. I don't have to be showing anybody anything. I just, it was extraordinarily
Sounds
nice.
lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, those are some goals.
And Coachella.
Yes.
So I'm going to admit to you, until like a couple of years ago, I didn't even know what Coachella was.
Sure.
And when I first started hearing about it,
Thought it was a bag?
no, I thought it was like a brand of RV or something.
Okay, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm still not quite sure what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like the kind of thing that I would never want to do because it like, I don't know. I now know it's some sort of music festival in a place called the Indio Valley, wherever the hell that is, somewhere near Palm Desert, Palm Springs, Palm something. Okay. All I can tell you, though, is that the young people go crazy for Coachella. And it was a really big deal that Carol G., who was on the show, I think, last year, Carol G. was the first Latina to headline Coachella. Bad Bunny had been, I think, the first Latino to headline Coachella maybe in 2023. Every Latino I know was at Coachella. Like Arturo Sandoval. She brought out Becky G. But she also, she spoke out about what it means for the Latino community.
Right. I saw that.
She spoke out about the abuses by ICE. She did things like recognize the people who came in front of her, before her, that opened up the doors for her. So she did a cover of one of Gloria Stefan's songs, just kind of as an ode and as a sign of respect. And I can't tell you how much it means right now to the Latino community that has been under attack in the way we have under this Trump administration, to see people like Bad Bunny, to see people like Carol G using these opportunities and this platform to show Latino excellence, to show Latino talent, and to speak up for a community that's being discriminated against and painted in the worst light. So it gave me all the feels. I watched reels and reels and reels of Carol G in Coachella. And then the next day, I saw that Celia Cruz was becoming the first Afro-Latina inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which some people had issues with because they say she's not a rock and roller.
Yeah, but it's broader than that. Yeah,
it's broader than that, right? Like what?
Like Dolly Parton, they were talking about putting in, and she got upset, or she got upset about that, saying she wasn't in rock and roll. It's a broad term.
But if you ask a lot of musicians and even in other genres, and you say to them, who's inspired you? Like, I know salsa singers who were inspired by the Beatles. And and there's people who say,
Absolutely.
Who talk about Celia Cruz and Celia Cruz's the things she's done. I don't care. I'm just happy she got in.
It's very cool. All right. Thank you for joining me today, Ana Navarro and Chacha. As I mentioned before, today is the last day to vote for our Webby. Vote now. You can see where to vote in the description of this podcast. Make sure you're voting for Behind the Table and not Anna's podcast, because those are two different things.
Bleep with Ana Navarro. I told you. People want me to have you on as a guest. They want me to turn the tables.
I'm available. I think I'm going to be less interesting than they think I am, but I'm happy to be there. All right. We will see you next week, and tune into The View tomorrow for a brand new episode. It'll be great. Thank you.
Behind the Table is executive produced by Brian Teta. Supervising producers are Nathan Getty and Summer Shea. Associate producers are Emily Darcy and Katerina Alexopoulos. And our editor is Brian Davis. And Director of Publicity is Laurie Hogan. From ABC Audio, Trevor Hastings serves as Senior Producer, with Director of Podcast Programming Josh Cohen.